Mr. Bill Thomas, welcome and thanks for doing this little interview.
Oh, no problem, Ken.
You know, all your students are going to appreciate it, especially me, because it's great. People don't get to hear the whole story often enough about what got you going with Russian martial arts Systema, and especially with your background, you know, what led you into that. So I think it'd be great to do this and share it with a lot of people. How old are you right now, Bill?
Right now, I'm 52, December 16th, 1960.
Okay.
I'd say 53 years on the planet.
Yeah,
If you
okay.
count my gestation period.
Yeah, okay. That'll give folks some perspective. How old were you when you started taking classes back in the old days when Stan and I were teaching down at California Martial Arts in the 80s?
Let's see, I believe it was in the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I was working on the barges, or I just quit,
Yeah.
which was 1980, 88, 89.
Was it that late when you came on?
I might have started at 87, but I'd be gone for months. So
Right.
So it was really hit and miss at first.
I remember that, yeah, that you were gone on the barges a lot, yeah.
But I'd have to really check, but I know it was in the late 80s.
Okay, yeah, fair
I'm
enough.
guessing like 88.
Trying to kind of give folks a perspective on your experience. And so what was the very first martial art you did, and how old were you when you started? And think, I know you did a lot of grapple type training too, so please include that in that idea.
My first time I tried to take a class was it was 1968. I was 8 years old. I saw Green Hornet on TV, and I was very excited about Bruce Lee. And I tried to call a karate dojo that was advertising in TV Guide, and my mom said, if we bought you classes, we'd have to buy all the other kids' classes, just like I told you with guitar lessons. So it wasn't until about high school that I really started pursuing it. Freshman year, I was all over wrestling, and I had a friend that transferred to the high school I went to, CBC, and his dad was a soccer and baseball coach at Forest Park College. And he got to go take karate classes, so he brought a friend, and I started taking karate classes with him. And then he dropped out, but I still kept going. And that was, I think it was like an Okinawan karate.
Okay. Maybe Shorin-ryu, that was one.
Right, the guy's name that taught the class was Bill Lobb, who was
Okay.
like a police officer.
I think I've heard that name over the years, yeah.
I think he just passed about a year or two.
Okay.
But that was that, and I was very active all throughout high school in wrestling. I guess they called it freestyle wrestling back then. Other parts of the country they would call it folk style wrestling. But that, and then I slowly evolved into little Greco-Roman wrestling, because it was more like judo. You could throw,
Mm-hmm.
and I really liked that. Trying to think of what happened after. Also, at the same time, I started taking Aikido classes.
Will Reed, right?
Right, Will Reed at the Kia Aikido Center. I'm trying to remember what year was that.
You know what? I almost had to be there when you did that, because 78's when he started over there. And I was in the first class.
That had to be, and it was right at the end of high school, which was 79.
Was your hair real long way back then?
No, not real long. It was
Okay.
79, I'm thinking.
Well, we had to have crossed paths because I was there
Yeah.
for about 3 years with Will. That's funny.
But that was only for a couple months, but I loved it. And I would go back and forth. I'd just go away and come back. Then at California Martial Arts, I ran into you and Jay and Stan, and did a lot of stick fighting and trapping and Jeet Kune Do and kickboxing and everything, whatever was there.
It was kind of the Walmart of martial arts in those
Oh,
days.
I loved it.
You know, about the time you came, I think we still had 8 separate arts going on under one roof, I think, at that time. I think that didn't phase out until Well, it may have been phasing about the time you started.
I know I was taking Wing Chun and Muay Thai at the
Mhm.
same time and trying to just take everything I could.
Kali Eskrima and
Kali-
Jin Fan.
Yeah, everything. Trying to think of other arts. Tai Chi and Bagua.
With Patty Burkhalter.
Right. A lot of that. And the same McGill Eskrima with Patty. Loved that.
So you got in a pretty varied background over, what would that be, probably 12, 15 years by then, wasn't it? that you've
Right.
been in?
Right.
So, where's the first place that you heard about Systema?
Well, I had, there was two different spots. I saw a passing reference in a Black Belt magazine, a small article, and I was curious. And at the same time, I had bought this. It was some kind of videotape. I'm trying to think of what it was, but I don't remember. But anyway, it had these highlights of other tapes. And there was just a snippet of Vladimir Vasiliev in Systema. And I kept studying that, and I had just read this article. It coincided right with this article. And I had wrote a few days before to Vladimir and asking him if there were any Russian martial arts instructors. And he said no, not at the time. His school was in Canada. And he said, oh, you could go visit my teacher in Russia. He goes, I'm going to go next month or so. And I remember thinking, there's no way I would do anything like that. I was just curious of the art. And I remember telling, I was working with some guys in my backyard on Tuesday nights. We would do stick fighting and just kind of some kickboxing and play around. And I was showing one of the guys the highlights, and I kept saying, there's something about the way this Vladimir guy moves. I can't quite figure out what he's doing, but I go, there's something very odd to my eye. Anyway, that night, my friend who I was pointing that out to ended up dying in a car accident.
Oh.
And he was a great friend and a cousin and a great workout partner. And it was the next night I had a dream that I was in an auditorium, and Vladimir Vasiliev was on the stage doing a talk, and I was the only person sitting in the auditorium. And I was looking at Vladimir, and then from behind him, my friend who had passed away the night before would appear behind him, and he kept pointing at Vladimir, and he would appear and he'd point. And it was very strange. He literally had a big cat in a hat on, and it was very strange. But I woke up that night in a cold sweat, and it was like 3 in the morning, and I got to the computer and I typed the letter to Vladimir, the return letter, and I said, okay, I'll go to Russia. I'll go meet your teacher. I feel like I'm being guided. And
There you go.
And boom, I was on a plane and made my
What
way.
year was that, Bill?
That was 2001, May, right at the end of the month. So I was there right in May, June time, right as it changed. But it was, I had no idea what I was signing up for.
That's great. I mean, 2000. Yeah, so that's been quite a while. I guess I would imagine it's probably pretty safe to say, as far as we know, you had to be about the first guy from St. Louis. I mean, you were one of the first in the country to actually go to Russia and start doing this. I mean, as far as we know, right? As far as guys from the U.S.
Right. There was, I think there was maybe 40 of us.
Dan Millman was one of them. The guy.
Dan Millman, the Peaceful Warrior, was one.
That's great. He's cool.
There was a handful of guys from the United States. There was guys from Taiwan and England, and I don't even remember all the countries.
Did Martin Wheeler start that far back? Do you know if he was there that first year?
He might have been. I'd have to go through the list. There was a handful of us, but I don't see a lot of those guys around anymore. I mean, some people just go on to other things, but I'm pretty sure I was the first person probably in the bi-state region in Missouri or Illinois.
Yeah, I'd pretty much bet on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just, and like I said, I wish I could have based it off of something really, my real keen eye had picked up, and that's what I wanted. I knew there was something I wanted, but I couldn't even define what it was at the time. And I literally feel like I was just guided to do
Yeah.
it.
I guess what the feeling that was something special was that, I guess that snippet that you saw in that video, right, sparked something, and then you had that powerful dream, and then that's
Right,
really what.
and the article was so intriguing. You know, that's the reason I wrote Vladimir was the article, because I kept thinking, what is this thing they're describing? It sounds so such a complete package.
Yeah.
But I don't regret my following whatever prompted me. I don't regret it.
So this is interesting. So I remember from some of the pictures and stuff you showed me. So that first group, you guys were actually on a Russian military base training, weren't you?
That is true. Trying to think of the name of the base, but yeah, we spent a good portion of our time on the military base, either training, running the obstacle courses. We did a survival course where we built shelters in the woods and ran through the woods, tracking each other, and you know, just crazy military base.
I remember seeing some of your photos, and I mean, it's like you guys were dressed in Russian uniforms, weren't you?
This is correct. Yeah. And
What was that all about?
That was, they just said everybody on the base needed to wear a uniform, so that way they would be noticed as being, apparently we were one of the first people, first group of foreigners ever allowed onto a Russian special forces base.
That's an experience on itself.
So that was something very unique, and they said they didn't want us, they wanted us to be able to fit in, so they gave us fatigues and had us run obstacle courses, and it was a lot of fun. It was. I'm
I
not
remember
sure.
the tank story.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the other Russian military people thought of us, because we looked, you know, very different. But yeah, they had a courage test where you would lay down and a tank would roll over you. That took a little bit of courage. The obstacle course was very tough. You know, I just don't think we were in that kind of shape to be able to do that. Constantine would encourage us to go faster and faster. Then he started throwing smoke bombs. Then he started shooting guns over our heads. And
Oh, that's really wild.
so it was hilarious.
I mean, especially, I guess I'm assuming you sure weren't the only civilian, you and Dan Millman, you know.
Oh no,
Probably almost everybody.
almost everybody was a civilian. You know, there was a couple of people that had military background, but most of us just were not from, you know, like I had a friend who was a fireman from Canada, and there was you know, one guy was a plastic surgeon from Virginia.
Wow.
So there was a lot of different people, but I think we all had a great time.
Boy, it sounds like it. I mean, gosh, what an experience. You know, and I get the feeling, like, looking at things now from stuff you're teaching us and stuff I see in the DVDs from how it's evolving over the years. It sounds like maybe in that early time, they were still more like heavily on the military end of things, you know, as they, I guess, were maybe experimenting to figure out what to do as far as bringing this out more to the Western world and the public more, I guess.
That could be. I know Mikhail's always had had civilian classes and military classes going, and I think it's always had kind of like a dual personality, that it was spawned from the military, but there was a time when pretty much martial arts were like 1917, when they just stopped all traditional martial arts, all traditional folk arts of all types, and then created Sambo was the military tool for the public, and that was the sporting, the main sport and military tool for conditioning and martial arts.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds like kind of similar to what happened in China, somewhat martial-wise, for at one point, from stories I've heard.
Right. That I think this pattern gets repeated over and over.
Well, a communist country, and I guess they
Right.
had certain principles within that on how they should operate to create, I guess, maybe a unity kind of an idea on how they did everything, I guess, was the goal.
Right. I think they were kind of don't like free thinking and individual creating things on their own. I just think there was more. They lay down a program for you.
Yeah, which especially with, didn't you mention one time that something about one of the goals they talk about in Systema philosophically is to be free.
That is
The body, freedom is a metaphor for...
Well, exactly, and that really surprised me because a lot of times as an American we think, oh, we're the ones that have the stranglehold on the concept of freedom.
Yeah.
But it's pretty universal, and the word Cossack means free men. So and they had their own martial arts, and they literally answered to no one. They would occasionally do work projects for the Tsar or whoever, or the king, but they were very independent, and there are components of that in Systema, definitely, and that's a big part of the martial art, is you're constantly seeking freedom. So that is a theme, definitely.
Wow. So, do you kind of know what year officially that Mikhail really started to offer this to the Western world? I mean, was it the year you guys went, or did it happen even a little before that? Do you know?
It had happened before that. Like that one tape I showed you, that was the class a year or 2 years ahead of me.
I was going to say, I thought I read somewhere that maybe 98 or 99 was the first time with the little group that he did.
I know Vladimir might have started teaching in maybe 93 in Canada, and probably was making videotapes probably around 96.
Huh. That far back, I'll be darned.
But it wasn't very well known.
Yeah.
And people just didn't quite it was a secret program for so long that
Sure.
even in Russia, it just wasn't well known.
That in itself is pretty fascinating, how these arts, I mean, we went through this kind of a story with Filipino arts when we were doing that years ago, that they were, I guess Dan and Asana was probably the largest proponent of bringing them out of being hidden within families and on certain islands, and being, they want people to know they were doing it, and they wanted to keep it to themselves. It seems to be kind of a thing that happens with these arts, regardless of the culture, I guess. So, wow, so that's pretty good. That's quite a story. So here's one of the big questions. Since you've done so many things, you got so many years in, if you could kind of narrow it down, what is it about Systema that makes you prefer it? Not only prefer it over other things you've studied, but makes you now pretty much just stay exclusively with it and not even do any of the other old arts you used to practice anymore?
Well, I have nothing against all the other arts. I think all the arts are great. For me, the niche Systemas helped me with is its emphasis on breath and relaxation, and the three main components are: it's a martial art,
Mm-hmm.
it's a health promoter, and also it's a healing modality. And over the years, I've accumulated a lot of. I threw my body around pretty recklessly, so I accumulated a lot of injuries that System has really helped me work through. But as far as breath, I don't know any art that goes into the level that Systema goes into. And not to say that there aren't other arts, I just might not know. But Systema is very generous with its information, and its unique training methodology I just find intriguing. How they can get you to a point without having a clear path that they're leading you.
That is intriguing, yeah.
I'm sure if I practiced other arts, if I ever get a chance to practice other arts, I would enjoy them also and continue to enjoy them, that information. But for Systema, it's meeting a niche that I was looking for, of being able to help me work on relaxation. As I get older, a lot of arts are based off of strength and speed, or your accumulated knowledge, and Systema's more teaching you how to relax and how to breathe and move.
I know it's hard to verbalize it.
And it's even hard to describe. You're exactly right.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I try to do it.
Right. I just, for me, it ended up completing. It seems to me to be like the complete package. It's covering multiple different phases of combat and self-defense and promoting health and proper lifestyle at the same time.
No, I agree. I mean, you know, a lot of the stuff we've studied was just far too brutal. You know, I used to think back about the way, you know, not the fact that we were doing knife training, but the way we did a lot of knife training. You know, it was very aggressive, it was very explosive, it was very, you know, precise, and in such a way that I don't think it's teaching much of anything as far as restraint. You know, which to me was, I had an experience with some young military guys I was doing some of that knife work with a long time ago, and it dawned on me, like, I don't know that I should be showing these guys, I don't know that they have a moral compass to restrain themselves when they're not in a military situation. It made me really rethink that.
Yes, Systema definitely has a big emphasis on trying to become aware of your aggressive tendencies, not yours, but all people have like a default mechanism that they become more aggressive as they get more fearful.
Sure.
And Systema tries to teach you to work with your fear, become aware of your tension, and you know, whether it be psychological or physical. And quite often they will equate the more aggressive someone is, the more fearful they are.
Sure.
And they try to step that down if you can. Yeah, that's another great emphasis, is the non-aggressiveness, which seems contrary to most people's thinking of when you're studying a martial art, to be learning how to try to be non-aggressive, I guess.
Yeah, that does throw people off. I mean, we've both seen it with when you're explaining this to people, or, you know, we got a new guy in class that comes from those more aggressive arts, just like we did. And it's interesting, he said something to me on the phone today about it. He said, you know, I really can feel, there's the key word, right? This is something way beyond anything I've ever experienced. And this guy's been in martial arts many years too. And he's getting the whole idea. It's coming clear to him why it's not only inappropriate morally to be aggressive all the time, but how that could actually be like throwing kerosene on a flame in a lot of. He's seeing that already, and I thought that's great if that you're conveying that, and he's picking up on it after a few classes. That's a good sign.
Yeah,
that's a good sign.
Well, it's such a great package. It sells itself. I'm amazed because I don't consider myself a athletically blessed or extremely gifted martial artist, but it's that the martial art itself is so great that I can convey the idea and still not be as blessed as natural athletes are. Not saying I'm horrible, but I do want to put a dose of humility in there as I teach, because they're, you know, you're going to meet people that are always at other levels,
sure,
and that's good.
Yeah.
I don't know that I ever want to end growing.
Yeah, that's stimulating for us, you know, dealing with just like the new guy, he's so big.
Right.
I think that's really great. You know,
yeah.
We need that in class.
I love all shapes.
He's huge.
Right.
I mean, he's tall.
Yeah.
You know, and he's strong. And he's got long reach, and that's good for everybody.
Oh yeah,
it's all good stuff. I mean, I'm right with you. You know, I mean, all the years I've trained and stuff too. I mean, what has it taken me? I would say by the time I spent 6 months with you in this, because we're just a little over a year now together with this.
Mm-hmm.
I think by the time I reached 6 months, I didn't like announce this to people. I may have told you, and I think I told Bill Vanderpoon, but I already knew right then and there I had no interest in doing any of the other stuff I've done for decades anymore. I just see no purpose for it anymore. It's like you said, this is the whole package. I mean, the health and fitness is there. The combat reality is there in a way that's so much more real because to me it feels more spontaneous.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's more natural. I'm not trying to do things in prescribed patterns anymore, which that used to fail for me frequently, and I used to say, that's crazy. You know, we need to be more like Bruce Lee. He was always trying to move away from that. And I feel like this art's been doing this already forever from what I've seen.
Right. I feel the same way. And that's, you know, always throws people when I say Systema doesn't have techniques per se. I mean, there are ways they go at things,
sure,
but it's not prescribed in a progression, and then you're bound by that. It's more, when you call upon it or you're being challenged, it's more inspiration and intuition. You say, well, what if I do this? Well, what about this? He's lined up that way. Couldn't I go this way? And that kind of, rather than saying, oh, I have to address this angle with that angle, or this hit with that block, it really does limit your potential.
Sure.
And a classic Systema thing is they would say there are no limitations except for moral ones, and they always put that caveat in because a lot of you want to put in that caveat if you can.
No, I understand why. Sure. Yeah, I think most folks could read into that one without having to be carried away. We're back to you train brutality. What you train tends to be what you do. If you train to be brutal all the time, you're likely to be brutal all the time, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, I think it's that simple. You know, you wire a guy up for kill, 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 and he's going to kill, 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 even when it's really not necessary or not moral. You know,
right.
So yeah. Final thing, Bill, and then we actually have class soon, right? So if you could make just kind of a simple, if you could give sort of your most simple core statement about the philosophy, what you feel the true philosophy of systemic training is, in a summary nutshell, how would you put it?
Well, I'll try to think of the training is really at the heart of it all. I mean, a lot of people say, well, show me a couple techniques, and that's not really where it's at. The heart of it is in the training. And the fascinating part is a lot of people say, well, let me come to a couple classes to see what's going on. And then they'll either, in their mind, think, oh, well, I'll figure this out after that. But I've been amazed at the classes. Each class ends up being so unique. Yeah. And it sounds kind of corny to say that almost no two classes are the same, but if you address the people in the class, they won't show up the same way. Just like it's very difficult to throw the exact same jab over and over.
Sure.
It ends up different every time, and if you become sensitive enough, and that's a big thing Systema works on, is sensitivity, becoming aware of how things feel. How you feel, how they feel, how the environment feels, and I wish I had a cool sound bite that I could just.
No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine.
but it really is in the training is where you showing up over and over, working on your breath, and becoming aware of your tension, because a lot of people aren't even aware that they're carrying tension in their body.
Yes.
It's a foreign idea, and it only takes a short amount of time doing a class where you start, someone says, well, I don't have any tension, and they say, okay, well, let's go to striking, and then boom, they'll become aware of it, because it can't move throughout their body. And that's a big thing in Systema is taking and receiving strikes. And that, again, each stage, both people are learning, and regardless of your level, you're still learning more. But it's a training that's the heart of it all, and that's kind of the attitude I think also, at least for me.
No, I think that's a perfect statement. I mean, I think that summarizes it. One of the things I like, and you said it, I just thought of another way to say it, is just for my own sake, but it's great that it's not, you know, class 1 and then class 2 and you have to be in this progression, because every class stands on its own. It's like a lesson within a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just a lesson. I mean, somebody that's not even really trained in martial arts could come to that class, and if they're just decent intelligence, there's a lot of metaphor in things that you feel and things that you see and how your body reacts to certain kind of stimuli, that it's pretty easy, I think, for the average person to see that can help them in business situations. It can help them in family confrontations, you know, that aren't even really like physical combat, but there's a lot of metaphor in how you react to things. And I think in that by itself makes a Systema class a lesson within a lesson.
Right.
You know, that's just sort of how I frame it, you know.
No, you're exactly right. And Systema over and over will study how people approach us. And that's has so much to do with how we approach others, how we approach problems, and these, you know, it's more about life. And that Systema just, you know, teaches you about life.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. You know, because I think that's what makes a martial art instead of a martial sport. When it's something you can really carry back into your life, and it's enhancing your health and fitness, and not tearing you up all the time. You know,
Right.
I love how we can train realistically, and you know, I don't get hurt like I used to in the other arts, and yet a lot of what we do, I think, is more realistic.
Yeah,
That's an interesting combination. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah, again, it's a stunning methodology, the way they can bring you right to the brink without breaking you.
I agree. Anything else you'd like to throw in before we wrap it up?
I can't think of anything else right now.
How about more people need to just come and join us, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Show up.
Yeah, come on down, you know. And that's one of the coolest things too, I notice, is we don't have that competitive attitude. It's like everybody's trying to help each other grow and learn. Doesn't mean it's not like painful sometimes, right? Emotionally and physically, but it's not the same as being injured, which is to me great.
Yeah, Systema will end up showing you where your limitations lie, wherever it is.
Yep.
I don't care how strong you are or however, you know, at a
That's for
certain
sure.
point you can be broke down.
Yep.
And if you're, you know, have enough humility to put yourself out there, you'll find out about yourself.
There you go.
That's
Self-study vehicle.
exactly.
Well, that's great. Thanks a million, Bill, and
Thank
maybe we'll
you.
be doing this again.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.